welcome to tonight's edition of Conservatives Gone Wild. I'm Jordan Kelter.
I'm Jimmy Caramblos.
And together we are the dynamic duo. Tonight we will be discussing gun control legislation.
Control legislation has been around for many years. It should be said from the outset that the Founding Fathers purposely created the Second Amendment to the Constitution Bill of Rights for the express purpose of having citizens maintain the right to remove by force a tyrannical government. Since the time, various acts of Congress have tried to moderate the Second Amendment by limiting access to certain weapons such as assault weapons, requiring detailed records and waiting periods for gun sales, the licensing of gun dealers, prohibition of firearm sales through the mail, and recently much tougher regulations by those who would abolish the Second Amendment altogether if they could.
Since the attempted seizure of colonial arms by British General Gage in 1775, various moves by legislators over time have tried to impair the right to bear arms on an unfettered basis. Most of the legislation to date has been an attempt to restrict certain kinds of weapons, even thought the United States Supreme Court, while upholding the Federal Firearms Act of 1938, did not put any prohibition of the types of firearms that could be held by citizens to include military-type firearms. It seems all firearms regulations or acts have been in direct response to a particular event. The National Firearms Act of 1934 was intended to keep atomic weapons out of the hands of organized crimes that was using them on America's streets. This act was amended in 1938 to require licensing and the record of who bought the guns. Mail-order weapons were banned after President Kennedy's assassination in 1968, and the Brady Act provided for waiting periods for gun purchasers in order that buyers be vetted.
Argument for gun control always follows some horrific events, such as the mass murders in Columbine, the mass murders in Arizona, the mass murders in Aurora, and clearly after the killing of small children in Sandy Hook. The argument says that there are certain kinds of weapons that should not be in the hands of citizens, and that certain kinds of weapons are not used for hunting or self-defense. The supporters of gun control claim that access to these weapons are the problem. They can too easily fall into the hands of mentally disabled people or criminals that will use them for criminal actions. This is mostly government control, liberal argument, with little or no answers to the cause of the shooting or crime in the first place. They claim that the framers had no idea of the advancement in technology in the world of guns, and that they envisioned the kind of sophisticated weaponry that now exists. They would have made provisions for it.
Possessing guns, on the other hand, is an inalienable right protected by the Constitution. The same liberals that would interpret the Second Amendment their way would also interpret other parts of the Constitution to suit their purpose. People kill people. Our guns are not the only device. Gun violence is down considerably from the past years. There are more homicides by other means than guns by a far amount. If you want to blame the gun, then blame the pencil for misspelled words. Blame the car and not the drunk driver for the death in drunk driving motor accidents. The fact of the matter is that over 300 million guns are in the hands of law-abiding citizens, but the government wants to control them because of the criminal actions of about 2% of the population. The Second Amendment is there for a reason, and a bigger government that wants to control all aspects of the lives of citizens is a dangerous form of government that will overstep its boundaries regularly. The right to bear arms is fundamental and cannot be challenged by politicians who use tragic events for political purpose. If they get their way, the only guns will be in the hands of criminals and who don't pay attention to gun registration, licensing, or any other law. The right to bear arms should not be swept into political correctness. Let us try to solve the issues of violence in the gaming industry, Hollywood, and mental health warning signs. Let us be aware that certain people on certain medications should not be allowed to purchase them.
Economically, gun and ammunition sales in all forms of multi-billion-dollar industry, if you restrict the ability to bear arms, you'll ultimately hurt the economy. Liberals and progressives don't care because they will advocate replacing gun sales and taxes with more deficit borrowing, thus putting the country in even greater economical peril.
Politically, the gun issue is a very emotional and real issue. Hunters, target shooters, and all forms of gun owners will not support overreaching gun legislation. President Obama can blame the Republicans, as he does for everything, but his gun bill could not pass his majority-controlled Senate. There are representatives and senators from states that treasure their right to bear arms, and they will always look out for their political future more than party lines. This is a politically difficult issue.
The majority of the American people do not trust the federal government, and the people are against control of their lives and liberties by folks they just don't trust. The people have been lied to on many occasions. Handing over their guns is something they're dead set against. Thomas Jefferson said, "Those who turn their weapons into plowshares will be plowing for those who did not."
We recently met with an officer from Laguna Beach Police Department who wished not to be filmed. He said his opinions and views in no way reflect those of the department and are strictly personal. We spoke to him about his opinion on the issue, and to our surprise, it wasn't too far off from our own views. The officer said that gun control is a very broad topic, but to briefly touch on the subject, he began by saying that he believed the Second Amendment was originally created to protect people from a powerful government, and it can be said that certain legislation has tried to be passed that would harm the rights of the citizens to protect themselves in their own home. He says Vice President Joe Biden suggests double-barrel shotgun is the perfect self-defense, but it's not, and it's even harder to use and not likely to help defend you against more than two people. In his opinion, the laws that are already on the books need to be enforced, but we do not need to come up with new laws.
So, what's your opinion on gun control?
Well, it's an interesting question because when we talk about gun control 5-10 years ago, that was maybe completely different than what many people looked at as far as gun control. Now, in light of what's happened in the United States and around the world, I think people have taken a much harder view. I would say that there is no system in place that's perfect that will be able to monitor those that should not have guns. Personally speaking, I think there needs some type of system in place, which is what we have now. Do I think it can be improved upon? Yes. I think that we would have organized chaos at best if we did not have something in place. Monitor those that should not have guns. Personally speaking, I think there needs some type of system in place, which is what we have now. Do I think it can be improved upon? Yes. I think that we would have organized chaos at best if we did not have something in place. But I think that we do need to have some type of control in place. What we have, good. Could we get better? Yes. Is it unfortunate that we don't have enough mechanisms in place to prevent what's happened? Absolutely.
So, do you think proposed current legislation that Obama and Joe Biden have proposed, do you think that will change anything?
I think that it'll make some changes. However, I do agree with people being to bear arms as one of their rights. I think some improvements will be made based on proposed legislation. Do I think there needs to be more done? Yes. Do I think there needs to be more bipartisan agreement and work on this and in this area? Absolutely. I think it's safe to say that there should be and continually be a monitoring of these policies, not only on a national level, but on a local level as well. And I think that's where we fail sometimes, is on the local level.